Welcome back, everybody. Doug Burson, CPA, and I want to get you guys caught back up. I haven't brought anything out because there hasn't been enough new information on BOI until now. Now there's new information that you need to know. I'll bring you up to speed, and I'll also tell you where I think it's going to go from here, so stay tuned. Okay, the number one thing you want to know is, do you have to file? Right now, we still don't have to file. So I want to be clear. Right now, we still don't have to file. But I want to give you a quick rehash since it's been a while. Most of you know this, but let's just go through it real quick. There was a case a year ago in Alabama that ended up actually just being focused on just the people who filed the suit, so that didn't help us. Then you move forward, and then Top Shop came along. Now that's the case that most of us were watching. A judge issued a national injunction. You remember that? That thing went back and forth, back and forth. It seemed like every week until January 23rd, and they put a stay on that injunction. We thought we were okay, but a lot of people had missed the fact that there was a Samantha Smith case that had been running around the same time, and a judge had also put a national injunction on that one. So that meant we still didn't have to file, even though the Supreme Court had weighed in January 23rd, I think it was. Yeah, January 23rd. We still did not have to file. That brings us up to now. So we were all wondering where the new administration was going to come down on this. There was reasons to think both sides. Well, now we know. They filed a motion on the Samantha Smith case injunction requesting a stay. This has just happened. If that were to happen, that means BOI would be back. The judge has given them until February 14th, which is tomorrow, to respond. We expect that they will do that. Now, here's where we start to get more of a feel for where the current administration is. The Treasury Secretary has said that he thinks that BOI is important. So that's number one. He thinks it's important. But he also wants to make sure it's not an undue burden. I think these are key points, and we'll talk more about that in a second. But that really gives us an idea of where the current administration goes on this. Now, as a part of all this, FinCEN has already indicated, as all this is coming out, that if this comes back, they're going to give us 30 days to comply. If you remember the last time, one of the last times when this was all happening, I believe they gave us 13 days, and there was reasons for that made sense. But at this point, they're now talking 30 days for us to comply. We expect an answer on this tomorrow. Reality is by the time this video out, it'll probably be today. So sometime between Friday and Tuesday or Thursday of next week, I think we'll start to see some movement on where this is going to go. But that's not all. There is now a new bill in the House. And so if you're finding this helpful, go ahead and subscribe, ding the bell. I'm going to be watching this and keep you up to date, so you're not going to have to worry about it. I'll let you know what's going on. This new bill is H.R. 736, and it already passed the House and has moved on to the Senate. If the Senate passes this, what this bill says is we're going to extend the deadline to January 1st of 26. So in other words, they're going to give us another year to get this done. But that's only going to be for companies that have existed, I believe it was before January of 24. If you're a company that's been set up since then, you're going to have 30 days to file. You're not going to get to wait till January 26th. January 1st of 26 before you have to file. That's only for pre-existing companies. New companies are still going to be under the 30-day rule. So there's also been quite a bit of activity in the Senate on this same thing. So there's a really, really good chance, and a lot of people feel like a more than reasonable expectation, this bill is going to pass. We don't know. I'm not saying it will, but there's a really good chance. And based on what I told you about what the administration is doing there and the fact that the House and the Senate are both going that way, it really seems like BOI may really be here to stay, but we may get a year before we have to do it. And it's also reasonable because, remember, I said earlier that the Treasury Secretary said, what did he say? He said he wants to make sure it's not an undue burden. That was the language. And I think that's important because I think that maybe gives us an opportunity to think that maybe this will become an annual filing, which makes a whole lot more sense than only giving 30 days to comply. So far about 15 million companies have filed, which means 20 million haven't. So that means there's a ton of work left to do. And it's also expected that FinCEN will cross-reference with the IRS. What does that mean? That means if you file a partnership return and there's two partners and only one of you were on the BOI report, there's a good chance those ones are going to get red flagged. So there's a lot of talk that this thing's going to be cross-referenced, and it's really, really going to matter that you do this, because remember those penalties, they were $600 a day for not doing it, and it was enforceable with prison time too. And so remember, the whole purpose of this thing was to catch the bad guys. Well, like I said earlier, the bad guys probably, if they're trying to hide, still aren't going to file. But that's why this is so important for them, is if the bad guys don't file, maybe they didn't have an actionable thing they could do against the bad guys. But now, with these penalties, they can move on some of these players that are a little less desirable, and they now have some teeth with some penalties and some jail time where they can at least disrupt some things. So that's why the current administration probably has an appetite for this. It's going to give them teeth that maybe otherwise they didn't have. So that just gives you a little concept for what's going on there. So what do I think? Well, so far, none of the bills to repeal seem to have gained any traction. So there just doesn't seem to be an appetite right now to repeal this thing. That means we're probably going to be stuck with it. What do I think is going to happen? I think the deadline will probably get pushed till January of next year for those who are existing companies. I think companies that are new are going to have 30 days to comply and get those filed. Based on the way I'm interpreting the things that are being said, I'm hopeful that this is going to turn into an annual filing, which greatly reduces the stress on owners and makes it much easier for us to stay on top of. And both the Supreme Court and the new administration both seem to think that this is a good thing. So with all those things going on, I think it's here. I think we're going to have to deal with it. So with that being said, I'm not saying we will. Right now there's no penalties. Go ahead and subscribe. That way when this new information comes out, I can keep you up to date. It is tax season, so sometimes I might be a day or so late, but I'll get it out to you. I'll make sure you know what's going on. And with that, I'm going to get back to work.